Yahoy! Can you guys see me? Can y'all hear me? Yes, yes. Okay. Well, my name's John Bush. I'm the Executive Director of Texans for Accountable Government. It's a political action committee. You can check out tagtexas.org. Let me know if this is still rolling. And I'm also the Education Director of Foundation for a Free Society, myfreesociety.com. I hail from Austin, Texas. This particular discussion is a couple different parts are going to go on this discussion. The first one is going to be a voluntarist justification for political activism within a corrupt institution of monopoly violence. Audio volume up, please, he says. Alright, I'm pumping the audio volume up. I'm turning my microphone up now to do my speech. A voluntarist justification for political activism within a corrupt institution of monopoly violence. Does that sound better? I'm also going to impart a couple, hopefully I can convince people that there is some value in participating within the political system in some regards. Then I'm going to impart a couple different strategies. One of them is what I just deemed just recently, inspired by the Agora I.O., is Aikido activism, and that is neutralizing state energy, neutralizing statist energy, and leveraging it for the cause of liberty. So, Aikido activism, neutralizing statist energy and leveraging it for the cause of liberty, is one tactic in order to push back on the system. And this again doesn't necessarily have to be political activism. It can take the forms of certain direct action. And then I'm going to talk about if you are a lot of people want to run political campaigns, Libertarian Party, even Ron Paul Republicans. If you are going to run a political campaign, I have some advice. 3 things that you can base your entire platform on that are radical, libertarian, voluntarist, and will educate people about the philosophy of liberty and the value of a free society, and hopefully it will demotivate them and turn them away from the state, because it'll cause a lot of cognitive dissonance and some questions inside of their heads. Okay, so first, here's my voluntarist justification for political activism within a corrupt institution of monopoly violence. So, I see a couple different tracks that are necessary in order to create a free society. And let me define freedom real quick. Actually, let me define liberty, a society that's based on liberty. Some say liberty is peace plus freedom equals liberty. Peace plus freedom equals liberty. Meaning, you can have freedom, you can be free, you can be a sovereign even. A lot of these sovereign citizens, they do their thing, they send in their whatever form to the Department of Treasury, and then boom, boom, they're out of the system. Or individuals drive without a license, with private plates even, and they're exercising their sovereignty, yet are they at peace? You know, if you're so say you're a free man on the free land, yet you're constantly looking over your shoulder, or every time you see the shark, you see the state and its manifestation in the local police department cruise by, your heart thrutters, and you get paranoid. If you have a family even, if you don't feel like you should have to ask permission to drive, to travel, I should say, and you're driving without a driver's license, traveling without a driver's license in your motor vehicle, I'm not necessarily at peace if I'm in that situation. So I want to create an environment of total liberty, where not only am I free, but I'm also at peace. This also goes towards, too, you can be free in your own home or your backyard, or you can go out and do your Sovereign Joe thing in the woods, right? But I'm not going to be able to be at peace knowing that some in my community or other individuals are being harmed and being violated. That's why I always try to work on it on a bigger scale, but we can't lose track, of course, of being free as individuals, or else what are we even fighting for? But the point was, you can fight for freedom, you can be free, but without being able to be at peace, I don't think we can attain true liberty. So, the reason why I advocate for certain political activism and certain participation within the system is because I see value in individuals going up in there and pushing back on those institutions which most inhibit free individuals from living freely. And that's some of the activism. Those are some of the institutions that we've been targeting with Texans for Accountable Government. Some of the institutions that the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance targets, Liberty Restoration Project, Catherine's brag, that they're targeting. And some of those institutions, to give an example, is we have an inherent right to freely travel, as I spoke before. Well, say I can exercise that free right, but again, I'm afraid of the police coming around. Something that's going to inhibit my ability to freely travel is checkpoints, be it sobriety checkpoints or driver's license and insurance checkpoints, or even border checkpoints, internal border checkpoints. These driver's license and insurance checkpoints, they're about to come around here in Austin. There's a bill coming up in our state legislature, Senate Bill 9. Just last in 2009, Texans for Accountable Government formed a coalition along with American Civil Liberties Union and other institutions, and we spent an evening at the State House pushing back on these sobriety checkpoints. Well, some people would say that that's inconsistent with the philosophy of liberty. If you are to be a voluntarist, any credence that you give to the institution ultimately will give the institution justification for its actions. To that I reply, well, you know, just because you ignore the institution doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to ignore you. Now, to go back to the peace plus freedom thing, I guess I should have started with this. Here's a couple precepts. A couple presuppositions to underline this entire argument is, if you're willing to take on the risk, you shouldn't be paying income tax, and you should try to weasel around property tax and those coercive institutions. I can see some major inconsistency just in that, especially if you're going into the political institution and advocating for the free society within it. Preferably, you know, don't be funding this very system that you're trying to defeat. So that's one of the biggest inconsistencies, if you can overcome that. But I do see value in individuals getting within that system and trying to push back on it and create a situation where the anarchist, that's the test. Can an anarchist live in this society unhindered? And if they can't, then I think that there's value in pushing back on those particular institutions, while not funding them preferably, that will inhibit them from living free. And again, that could be the test. Sobriety checkpoints would be one of these institutions, as would driver's license and insurance checkpoints. So if you can take some time, go to the State House, push back on this, make them look foolish for even bringing this up. You can always use their own rules against them, a classic Saul Alinsky tactic, and force them to follow the Constitution. It's obviously unconstitutional, which is supposed to be a restraint on government. It's unconstitutional to travel, to inhibit our free travel with unreasonable search. So you can go in there, and while you're doing it, you also have an opportunity, which is something that I'm going to speak about just a little bit later, to educate people about the philosophy of liberty. Not only the representatives, who need a lot of education, but more importantly, the people that are in the audience, the media that might be there, and a lot of these local channels will play, like in City of Austin, they play the city council meetings on Channel 6. A lot of people flip through the channels, watch those. Some people watch them regularly. You can also take that video and pop it on YouTube channels. So I would advocate participating within the system when you can push back on those institutions that most inhibit individuals from living freely, and you can simultaneously get in front of a stage that's being provided. This is going to be something I illustrate when I talk about Aikido activism. Getting in front of a stage that's provided by the state in order to utilize their stage that they've given to pump out a hardcore message of a voluntary society, and all the while undermining and pushing back, ridiculing. It's really easy to undermine these guys' argument for this coercive state. The liberals, they're not even getting what they want. They're the ones that want to use the government. The conservatives want to use it for their own ends, which are contrary to their principles. It's easy to undermine these guys. I advocate getting in there and throwing some cognitive dissonance into the mix and spreading the message of liberty whilst pushing back and making it more difficult and putting a wrench in the system and slowing down their gradual control over all of us. And again, the test is, if you have anarchists in your community, the voluntarists in the community, what institutions inhibit them from living freely? Another one that I like to target, and this is something that Catherine Blash and I founded, the Operation Defuse. So this is another institution that inhibits people from living freely, and that's the Fusion Center apparatus, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI as well. They're setting up institutions. It's a law enforcement, information gathering, intelligence sharing apparatus that seeks to merge local, state, and federal law enforcement from the university level to Austin Independent School District all the way up to the CIA, even international governments, Interpol. And I've noticed in a lot of their documents, a lot of their reports, there's stuff that targets, their reports that target activists, for example, and target individuals and organizations. They tend to focus on those individuals and organizations that choose to operate outside of the federal monopoly. I've found a pattern, a recurring pattern, whether it's anarchists, black separatists, Christian identity movement, sovereign citizens. We've done a lot of research, and we're yet to find references to the Free State Project, so that's a plus. But you guys did just get your latest fusion center. It's a pretty weak one. But the point is, these institutions target those individuals that choose to operate outside of the system. They allow for law enforcement to more effectively undercut and undermine these individuals. They direct money towards these individuals. Another component of the fusion center system is the marginalization campaign that's currently underway. Something to demonstrate that, to underline this, of course, the war on terror. I awoke to the 9/11 lie in 2002, thankfully, and managed to see the creation of the war on terror apparatus from the get-go. I knew that it was a bunch of BS. I knew all along that it wasn't used to take out the manufactured terrorists, because they didn't exist to the extent that they made us to believe they are. And now, of course, we're seeing it coming all the way full circle. 8-10 years later, now we have an institution that's targeting anybody that seeks to challenge the status quo, and that shows itself how it affects our community by von Nothaus and the Liberty Dollar. The U.S. Attorney, apparently in some press release, stated that this is a unique form of domestic terrorism. We will do anything we can to infiltrate, disrupt, and get rid of these organizations. And you can bet your bottom dollar they're using fusion centers to do this, but they're putting the idea that these particular practices, delegitimizing the already delegitimate Federal Reserve note, which I talked about in my discussion earlier, competing with it. They're leading the American public and law enforcement, more importantly, because the law enforcement have the guns. Actually, no, I'm sorry, the American public are more important. They're leading them to believe that individuals such as ourselves, those that would exercise a unique form of terrorism, that would dare to return to sound money to compete with an institution that funds foreign wars of aggression and funds our own oppression, the very institutions that are labeling us now unique terrorists, how dare they try to do that? They're trying to lead the American public, law enforcement, to believe that we that would challenge the status quo, which is a monopoly on violence, mainly emanating from the federal level, but emanating from every level of government, that we are a violent threat. They're doing this with the Southern Poverty Law Center, of course. Catherine Bleish is on their SPLC list, as well as many other patriots and many other libertarians. They do this same thing whenever a terror incident happens. Anybody that would challenge the status quo or choose to operate outside of the monopoly, sovereign citizen, people that use private plates are now getting meshed into that. A lot of the liberty community is starting to genuinely create the free society and use private plates, private license, and unfortunately the law enforcement is being led to believe that these individuals are violent radical threats. And they show one video where there's a sovereign citizen who comes out with a gun, and now everybody could potentially have a firearm, and things are more likely to escalate because of the Department of Homeland Security, Southern Poverty Law Center, Anti-Defamation League, and those similar institutions. That's why I advocate, and this is a way that it's not even necessarily political activism. Meeting with these people isn't necessarily participating within the political system. Lobbying, as I said before, against sobriety checkpoints, for example, would be participating. This could be more of a direct action communication campaign. But it has ultimately political ends, because you're trying to prevent this political institution from further harming free people. But Catherine Bleish and myself, we founded Operation Defuse. So what we do within the political institution, and I like to think of myself as a voluntarist. Catherine is definitely more consistent than myself, but I don't see this as being anywhere remotely inconsistent with voluntarism, to travel to these institutions, the very institutions that are targeting and leading law enforcement to believe that we're violent threats, and to walk up to them and say, hey, my name's John Bush. I'm with Texans for Accountable Government. Or I'm just John Bush, a free man, and I'm concerned with the activities of your law enforcement fusion center, and I would like to sit down with you and discuss. I'd like to give you my grievances. And then throughout the conversation, you inform them that you're a peaceful person simply trying to bring about change or live free in an unfree world, you know? Refer to the Constitution if you want. Talk about your inherent freedom and talk about these reports that have been coming out. The MIAC report labeled everybody that's watching this could potentially be a radical militia member because you fit into this broad category that they paint, broad strokes for everybody. So there's an opportunity to participate, to show up to these guys, to show up to your police chief who's reading these reports and who's overseeing the trainings, to his law enforcement. Show up to your sheriff, show up to the district attorney even, build relationships with these people and demonstrate that you're a peaceful person and they need not believe what they're hearing from the Southern Poverty Law Center intelligence report that they have sitting on the bathroom toilet. Combating fusion centers, that's another way in order to push back. Something that we're doing here in Texas through lobbying, participating within the system, is we are pushing a bill. It's going to be heard next Wednesday that would prohibit the collection of non-criminal information regarding political, religious, or social views, associations, or military history. It would also prohibit the collection of non-criminal private health records. It would prohibit the collection of non-criminal biometric information. It would also prohibit the collection of non-criminal personally identifiable information. So if this thing passes here in Texas, it'll throw a big kink in the fusion center apparatus, and in turn it will allow free people who choose to participate outside of the federal monopoly, it'll be a little bit easier for them to ultimately reach their goal of total sovereignty, and hopefully they'll be able to be more at peace knowing that there's not a big bad big brother institution that's so that's another one of my justifications. So we're lobbying at the state level in order to push that through, and I think it'll help big time for voluntarism. And again, if you're not funding the very institution which you are seeking to overtake, I don't see it to necessarily be inconsistent to show up to them and to point out that the state is capable of FBI COINTELPRO infiltrating and disrupting. Look how it's contrary to its own purpose to supposedly protect life, liberty, and property. Look at the much better opportunity that you have. We don't need these police. There's always an opportunity to promote community and market solutions compared to the state ones whenever you go in and speak to these representatives and whenever you go lobby. Another institution that's a good one to target, we also pushed back the prospect of police officers in Austin being trained to do blood withdrawals, forced blood withdrawals, if they suspect you of being intoxicated. They do them. They're called no refusal weekends. They're happening all across the country. They're all emanating from the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration, from our favorite central government. And local police departments are taking money, training police officers, the DWI task force, to detect a potential drunk driver, pull them over. In some instances, they're doing it at roadside stops on the side of the road. Sometimes they're doing it at checkpoints. And they would actually have the officer administer the blood withdrawal themselves. Of course, this is probably training police officers to do blood withdrawals in the event that they ever assist if there's some sort of pandemic and they have to do a mass vaccination campaign, with Massachusetts almost went through with. So we managed to throw a kink in their system. And this type of activism that we took, not only did we go lobby the city council and have meetings, but we also showed up and every single Halloween we dressed up as vampire cops. We dressed up in cop uniforms, we put on robes, we painted our face white, we paraded there. First year there was about 25 of us, second year about 30 to 40. The third year, I mean, there must have been a good 50 of us, and we marched all the way down 6th Street, the big bar district, with big signs, big needles. The media comes out, and we really get to illustrate how goofy the idea of a police officer doing blood withdrawals. And one thing that we do is we now have the stage to promote, again, community solutions. So again, there's always value not only in pushing back on the institutions that interfere with free people, but also on taking their stage in order to promote the cause of liberty. That's what I call Aikido activism. I'm going to drop a quick example here, and then I'll explain it a little bit further towards the end. But you take their stage. They held the event, this no refusal weekend. You take their energy that they've directed into that. Aikido is a form of karate whereby you redirect the energy of your opponent that's coming towards you, and you deflect it, or you redirect the energy away from you. It's used for a smaller, weaker opponent to push back on the attacks of a larger opponent, in this instance the libertarians and the big Leviathan state, right? So the big statist Austin Police Department, the Department of National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, they put together these no refusal weekends. They put out their press report, their press kit. They go to town. They do little media appearances. They create the stage. They created the event. Of course, we preferred never to happen in the first place. So we show up on their stage. We leverage their energy. We get the cameras on us, and we say, "Oh, come on, this doesn't work." We undermine their arguments. But more importantly, we say there's always a community alternative that's better than coercion. That's why we say community, not coercion. And we then promote a project that we support called Square Patrol, whereby these guys, you call them up, they drive a little motorized scooter out to your vehicle, they collapse the scooter, they put it in the trunk, and they drive your drunk butt home, you and your car. So this is a perfect community solution. They have a suggested donation of $20. We should be educating people about this, not using this coercive institution that violates individuals' right to be free from unreasonable searches. Another quick tip is, I don't like to refer to the Fourth Amendment so much, or the First Amendment. Refer to the natural right. Then you can educate people. A lot of people don't even know what the hell the Fourth Amendment is, but you can say, hey, this is a violation of our natural right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. Again, undermining that, or highlighting your natural right. But always push back and always demonstrate that there's a better community or market solution. You take their stage. It's Aikido activism. And I'm going to talk about that here a little bit more shortly. But another example of an institution that prohibits individuals from living freely, and that I think it's well worth some individuals' time who are capable or who are able to stomach going into the belly of the beast. Because I got to tell you, this time around going to the State House, it's definitely a lot more difficult than in 2009. In 2009, I was a little bit more bought into. I wasn't fully exploring. I was aware of agorism and just starting to fully comprehend the concepts of a genuine free society. And I had a lot more faith in the state as the way to do it. But this time around, I walk in there and like, man, there's suits and just lobbyists everywhere running the show, and it's absolutely disgusting. And I just got this motivation to get a bunch of people to dress up in suits with signs that say lobbyists and just run through the halls, pushing people over, barging into the bathroom. We run this place after all, right? That's another thing you could do. That's more direct action, not necessarily political activism. But it's a lot more difficult this time around. But one thing that we did in 2009, and this is a third example of an institution, driver's license, sobriety checkpoints, that hinders people from their free right to travel. If somebody could go in the system and make sure that they can freely travel across their state without having a sobriety checkpoint or driver's license checkpoint, I think that's a good thing. And I think it furthers the cause of voluntarism. The second one is the Fusion Center, of course. They are directly targeting and assisting law enforcement in breaking up, infiltrating local anarchist movements and people that choose to operate outside of the system. The third one is what we did with the vampire cops. That's a very intrusive institution that could lead to some very bad things. We got to go just jam them up in the media. And then, of course, you go jam up at City Hall, too. You get to talk to everybody. The media comes there as well, and you can spread the message of liberty and always promote these the alternatives. That's a lesson in that one. That's another example of Aikido activism. The fourth example is a bill, and this one really illustrates how a lot of these laws, these statists, man, they just can't stop going after your freedom. It's disgusting. And this bill in 2009 had to do with the Texas Family Protective Services, which is an example of, it was Texas's CPS. So you can live as free as you want. I want you to live as free as you can. We should all live as free and consistent as possible. That includes not funding our own oppression. But that doesn't mean that an institution is not going to exist that is willing to use force to kick your door in, to infiltrate your family and the people around you, and ultimately take your children from you. This is what they do. They've done it in the past. It happens all the time. You can be as sovereign as possible, right? And that's a terrible thing, and it's illustrated by a bill that was introduced and heard before a hearing. We were in New Hampshire while this happened, but I sure would have liked to speak on it. There's a bill about pregnant mothers that smoke marijuana should be imprisoned, and their parental rights are taken from them afterwards, which illustrates that it's not rights, it's privileges if the state can take them away. But this is how absolutely absurd this has gotten. 2009, a bill was passed that would have allowed the Texas Family Protective Services to get access to your children, to interview them, also to get access to their records, without a court order, without any semblance of due process. Now, this bill directly targeted the homeschool community because, as most people know, when you have a child in the public education system, the public indoctrination system, the state has access to them like that. They just take them to a psychology class. What have mommy and daddy been fighting, haven't they? Mommy and daddy have been fighting, haven't they? Well, yeah, they fought once. Oh, yeah. Boom, you know, we got a warrant now. We're taking the kid. It's a lot easier to do that when you have a child in public school. But this homeschool community, the state rarely ever, never has access to the kids. You could have your own libertarian, you know, you guys got a whole community in this area, part of town. You guys stick to yourselves. Everything's great. They can't get to your children. They want your children. Part of this whole big paradigm, part of the, you know, the establishment's effort against us is to break up the community, to break up the family unit, to replace it with government, of course. But this bill would have allowed them to get access to your children without a court order. It was directly targeting the Homeschool Coalition. It actually got slammed down in committee. People hated it. They tacked it on at the end on the House floor, and it passed. It's a good thing to say that the guy that authored it, he's not a representative anymore. He's a Democrat, Patrick Rose, because they know how to take better care of your children than you do, of course. Because, I mean, come on. They're democratic socialists. Not to make light of this, but the bill passed, and a coalition formed together out of nowhere, the Homeschool Coalition, Texans for Accountable Government, Parental Guidance Center, Texas Eagle Forum. We organized a bunch of conservative groups to push back on Rick Perry and to encourage him to veto a bill, and wouldn't you know it, the bill was vetoed. So I believe this is another example of an institution that it's worthy of some voluntarist time, and some in the liberty movement, even if they want to be consistent, to show up to this institution. Again, don't fund the institution if you can. If you're willing to take on the risk of not funding the institution, that's the first step to avoid inconsistency. But if you can accomplish that, I still feel it to be consistent to show up to this and to say, hey, I'm a free person, and I do not agree with this, and to organize people, to educate people, to, again, get in there and undermine. When you have that stage, you do a press conference, you speak in front of the committee, you can record it, you can put a YouTube video educating that, and you can educate people on how you own your children. You know, your children own themselves. There's a debate for libertarians right there, but certainly the state doesn't own them, and that's for damn sure. So I think that's another institution. Just the very fact that they were going after the homeschool children, because they already had access to the state-run that go to public schools, and you know, we spent some time on that. It took some energy, but we managed to push back on it. So I'm going to chat about Aikido activism. Then I'm going to really quickly, before we get to 3:45 here, chat about 3 things that I would recommend anybody running for office. 3 things that you should base your entire campaign around. But the quick note is, none of this means anything. None of this political activism means anything. And in fact, it is absolutely futile if that's all you do. If you only focus, and this probably isn't the audience that is watching right now, but if you only focus on political activism, you know, say you're big into reforming the Republican Party because that's our path to freedom, we'll beg the Republicans for our freedom, and then we'll be free. If you're only doing that type of thing, or if you're only doing what I'm doing with Texans for Accountable Government, it's an absolute exercise in futility because there is no political solution. That's why all the while, if you caught my discussion before, I talked about the different components of building a free society, and I mentioned some of Cat Blyce's steps on how to step outside and transition yourself towards more of a free person and into agorism. If you're not doing that, if you're not freeing yourself, and if you're not building the free community that we all yearn for, then the political stuff is absolute futility. That's why I recommend a simultaneous approach, and it kind of gets hard when it's the same person, which is something I'm trying to do, but leaning more towards building the free society side lately. But again, I do see value in all those for the reasons I stated before. It doesn't have to be the same person doing both. You can have different cliques and different crews doing both, but I always think it's easier and will be more able to build the free society if we are able to throw a rink in this system. And we all know the mofo is going to collapse anyway, right? But before it collapses, it's going to manifest its most disgusting and intrusive character yet. And these institutions that they're building, you know, HR 645, they already have the network laid to set up 6 regional internment camps and all that good jazz. Maybe you caught the Police State episode on Jesse Ventura that Kat and I were on. That thing's going to come crashing down faster than you could say, but I'm a free person! No, you can't do this to me. I'm free. I've declared it. So again, I think there's still value pushing back on that, but we absolutely must build the free society or there's no point whatsoever. We'll continue in the so-called revolution, right? That's why it's peaceful evolution. It's a peaceful evolution channel. We're trying to evolve beyond the need for the coercive state. We're not trying to simply revolve. It's not a revolution. We don't want to repeat and revolve, never advancing the ball forward. Simply repeating the mistakes of revolutions past and history past and liberty movements past, which is to use violence, overtake the institutions, and then we'll be the ruling class, you know, and you can trust us, right? It just happens. It's a revolving cycle. We never move advance beyond that. That's why it's absolutely necessary to build a free society. Quick disclaimer on that. Okay, so here's a quick point back on the Aikido activism. It looks like I got about 10 minutes left. Aikido activism, as I said before, Aikido is a brand of karate whereby you leverage and you redirect the energy that's coming towards you and you push it towards your cause, which in the instance of karate or self-defense would be defending yourself. So you have a larger attacker coming at you. It doesn't even necessarily have to be larger. Coming at you, throwing a punch, you know, rather than moving out of the way and punching him, you grab his energy, and they advise that you make your two weights and your two gravities become one. You grab his energy, so he's coming at you like this, grabbing his energy, deflecting, both energy becomes one. Now you can shift the gravity of him as well, take him down. So that's like the fundamentals of the karate, which I haven't actually studied. There is a Aikido dojo here in Austin, and I intend to visit the guy and get a more, well, hell, I should actually practice it for self-defense. You know, that's the first line of defense against tyranny, of course. Besides this, whoop, getting sidetracked here. So the way that you can use that for political activism, or just activism in general, and I think I used the example of them setting the stage to show up as vampire cops and totally ridicule them and make them look like jerks. Another thing that we did with Texans for Accountable Government, Austin Police Department, they held their annual Guns for Groceries buyback program, which someone mentioned it just illustrates their statist absurdity because they didn't sell the guns in the first place, so it's not them buying it back. Austin Greater Crime Commission, this nonprofit that was funded by a private family foundation, they seeded $30,000 to encourage Austin Police Department to tell everybody to turn in their guns for a grocery card, right? So there's the enemy, the state. The enemy, the state, by the book. They set up this event to take firearms off of the streets, to take firearms out of the hands of peaceful people. And that's a bad thing. I believe firearms in the hands of peaceful individuals leads to safer families and safer communities, right? And that's been proven. John Lott, more guns, less crime. So they set the stage. Statist, negative energy, guns for groceries. They sent out their press releases, their press kit, media covered it, they were all over it. They were even leading up in the week before. You know, APD's doing another guns for groceries program, so we decided, hey, we got to counter this thing. Last year, a private donor mentioned to me, you know what, if they do that again, I'll donate $2,000 to the cause. I'll donate some money to the cause. So this private donor donated money to the cause of going out and competing with the Austin Police Department to purchase the firearms for cash instead of the grocery cards. And instead of destroying the firearms like the Austin Police Department intends to do, we will now take the firearms and put them in the hands of peaceful, law-abiding citizens who may not be able to afford firearms, who are interested in protecting their families and their community. So we sent out press releases alongside the APD press release, and the media covered our event every time. APD's Guns for Groceries program's up, and it looks like they got a little competition. And our press release was tag outbids Austin Police Department, you know. And the talking points, we built relationships with these guys, and a lot of the talking points they used were totally in our favor. We got interviewed, they were there live, we got interviewed the night before, people came specifically asking to help, people came to donate more money in order to purchase more firearms. It's really a beautiful thing. A natural market ended up springing up, and sure enough, you had 6 to 7 people that were competing amongst themselves to purchase the firearms. It was slim pickings because the public was aware that they're about to get a $300 gift card for some firearm that they've had stashed away for a while. Many of them had multiple firearms. But the point is, this is an example of Aikido activism. The statist negative energy presented itself in the plan, in the event of the Guns for Groceries program, to attack our liberties, to attack the idea that people should own firearms to protect themselves, to destroy the firearms. We took their energy, redirected it by pushing a press release and holding a counter program, raising money, and now we promoted it, redirected it, we neutralized their energy because we got our talking points in, and we were able to throw in and say that firearms in the hands of peaceful, law-abiding citizens are keep people safe. They later had to change their talking points to state that we want to give people the opportunity to get old firearms out of their homes because people might rob them, which is why you should own firearms either way. So we neutralized a lot of their energy because they saw talking points of us saying, well, of course, studies have shown that firearms in the hands of law-abiding citizens makes communities safer. It happens every time. Criminals don't follow these laws that when there's gun restrictions, gun control leads to more crime. They had to change their games. We neutralized their energy, and we redirected it. And now we're going to put firearms in the hands of peaceful, law-abiding citizens so they can protect themselves and create a more free society and protect and defend their family and their community. So that's an example of Aikido activism. It's any time when the state rears its ugly head and it presents an opportunity for an individual or an organization to steal their spotlight, to neutralize, to create cognitive dissonance, to undermine their arguments with signs, whatever it is, and to redirect it for the cause of liberty, whether it's just simply messaging, undermining that, saying this isn't right, here's a better voluntary opportunity, or actually doing some direct action and creating a more free society and leveraging it for the cause of liberty by arming peaceful libertarians. So that's Aikido activism. So looks like I've got 5 minutes left. I'm not a big fan of politics. I think it's very difficult for libertarians to win races if they are to be genuine libertarians and be radical and promote a radical cause. If they want to sell out and do, some sort of Ron Paul conservatism thing through the Republican Party, or they want to take the path that the current Libertarian Party at the national and the state level, no disrespect to West Benedict, the path that they're taking, which is this sellout brand of Bob Barr, Wayne Allen Root style libertarianism, then they're let's run office on this, let's run people on office in this way capacity so we can actually win. Not to mention that's not happening, but it entirely defeats the purpose. Of course, Murray Rothbard wrote a lot about this during the founding of the Libertarian Party strategy. I think that that's waste, and it is it never comes out with anything because you're not furthering the cause of liberty. I just recently saw an article about Tracy Ward, and they said Tracy Ward's unsuccessful bid to Kansas City place 6, right? Tracy Ward, hardcore libertarian, pink hair, true radical, didn't hasten on her message. She got 39% in a major city. She made it into the runoff over all these city bureaucrats and goons. She got 39%, and the opponent got 61%. The opponent was the husband of the incumbent. She kept it radical. She dominated. They said the unsuccessful bid, that was a success because she got the message out there. And here's the 3 messages that she got out. And one of them is, you run for office, you keep it radical, you always say your ultimate goal is a genuinely free society based on consensual government, right? And in order to promote that, you go out there and you say, they say, well, what are we going to do about crime? And you say, you know what? I'm confident that this common problem that we have, this is the generic answer. So if you are going to run for office, keep it radical. You might not win. That's okay. You'll educate people. You'll get your name out. You'll further the cause. You can promote individual causes. The 3 things to say. The first one to base your whole platform on is something that Tracy did is, yes, we do share a common problem, and I'm concerned with that problem as well. However, I'm confident that there's always a community or market solution that can handle this common problem better than state coercion, or better than a monopoly. That's the whole line for anything. What are we going to do about crime, Tracy Ward? Well, you know what? I was tired of waiting for the police department to take action. I went ahead and started a neighborhood watch group. We have a Google group. We look after each other's homes when someone's out of town. We do walks. What are we going to do about this trash, Tracy Ward? The neighborhood's all messed up. City's not coming. You know what? I took action. We organized a trash day. There's always a better community way to do it. The community can always do it better. And that's just a generic one. Of course, people doing it of their own accords without having to be coerced and taxed works better, but also the market works better too, and then you have an opportunity to undermine their statist Keynesianism because the market will always dictate what happens, and the best way to allocate community goods, resources, services is always the market, and the community can do it better. That's the first thing. The second answer you always say is, well, you know what? I think that it's always better when it's decentralized. Whenever we decentralize authority or the decision-making process, I think that's always a better way to go. And that can take in the form of, what do you think about the City of Austin energy? Well, I think it should be decentralized. I don't think we should only have one choice about where we get the provision of energy from. I think there should be multiple choices. Maybe Joe can set up a solar shop on the east side of town and I can tap into his system. It's always better to decentralize. What about the sound ordinance, the noise permits? Well, I think the communities should be the ones deciding this type of stuff, all the way down to the homeowners association level, ultimately at the individual level, but the point is you have more choice of where you inhabit yourself when it's more decentralized. Not to mention you are more capable of influencing the process and keeping it consensual, which leads to the third argument. So the first one is, yes, I'm running for office, and here's my platform. The community and the market always does it better than the government. 2, it should always be decentralized to the most local level, to the individual. Outside of that is family and community. His neighborhood should be the one making decisions, maybe in this particular region of a municipality. The city should be the ones making decisions, not the state. Ultimately, the state should be the one making decisions, not the federal government. It should always be decentralized, but it should be decentralized all the way to the individual. And the third one, and this is where I was actually inspired by old Ian Freeman in a video that he did where he interviews the city manager of Keene, right? And the whole discussion is about the social contract and consensual government. The third one is, my name's John Bush, I'm running for Austin City Council, and I stand for consensual government. Individuals should not be forced to pay for any services that they do not use or that they deem to be immoral. I stand for consensual government. Why? Do you think we should force people into these programs? And he was talking about, well, you know, we use the roads. I might like to use the fire department if my house were to burn down, but I'm morally opposed to the public education that goes on in this city and what they're teaching these children. How about I just cut you a itemized check for the services that I use? I think that you talk about the importance of consensual government in every instance, and that can send ripples through the community because it creates cognitive dissonance, and it causes people that are listening to you, the media that's interviewing you, the debates, people that are involved already, it causes cognitive dissonance, and it forces them to realize that, in fact, they are not living in a voluntary society based on consensual government. So again, the 3 steps, the 3 things to promote. If you're going to run a political campaign, run it as libertarian as possible. Make it clear that you're advocating for a free society and that you don't think the government has done the job. You don't think it's capable of doing the job. If anything, it's holding us back. You have the opportunity, you have the stage to educate people about the philosophy of liberty and undermine their faith in the state. And they give you that stage. It's like, here it is right here. There'll already be all these shows. There'll already be all these chances to get in front of people with the philosophy of liberty, so on and so forth. You can decide what to do if you win. If you're going to take salary or whatnot, that would be inconsistent, of course. But you can just go in and start eliminating programs left and right, never vote to add anything. That kind of gets inconsistent when it goes to that question. But either way, if you're just running an educational campaign, the 3 things. 1, the community and market can always do it better than the state. Because the state's a monopoly, it takes away choice. Community do it voluntarily, they know each other better, they want to take care of each other better, the reasons go on and on. 2, it's always better to be decentralized, all the way down to the level of the individual, and then it should go from competing circles outside of that. The neighborhood association can decide better than the city, the individual and the family can decide better than the county, so on and so forth. And the third one, most important, consensual government. I'm running for office because I'm tired of coercive government. I think government should be consensual here in the city of Austin, here in Keene, New Hampshire, and I don't think anybody should be forced to pay for any service that they don't use or that they find to be immoral. And they say, well, what about the poor people? You say, well, that's why I'm happy to live in Keene, New Hampshire, city of Austin, because there's people out there like you that are concerned with the poor. And I know that if you're concerned with the poor, you're not going to be a hypocrite, and you're going to get out there and take care of them and help them out yourself. So, all right, I'm over my time. Those are my things. First, it's a voluntarist justification for political activism. Focus on the institutions that inhibit other free people from living freely, so we can have not only freedom, but also peace, and we can finally experience liberty, or some call it eudaimonia, state of eudaimonia. Second, I got into Aikido activism. That's leveraging state power, negative statist energy, and redirecting it for the cause of liberty, whether it's educating people and undermining their arguments and their merit, their essence, or it's actually physically and objectively furthering the cause of liberty by allowing people to have self-defense, for example, by purchasing firearms. And the third were my 3 things to point out whenever you are running for a office. Don't go conservative, keep it radical. This is my justification so I can sleep at night, and the cognitive dissonance doesn't eat my head away, but I think it's helping a lot to further the cause of liberty, and you should consider sticking it to the man by using their institutions against them. John Bush, Texans for Accountable Government, tagtexas.org, Foundation for Free Society, myfreesociety.com, one of the sponsors of this event, OperationDefuse.com I also spoke about. And then again, big ups to Agora.io, big ups to George Donnelly, and everybody holding it down to build a free society. Check me out tomorrow. I think I'll be speaking at 4 p.m. It'll be the Carnegie Method, harmonizing with the left and right, the Carnegie Method. Peace.